At dusk, when the sky had begun to fade from pale gold into deep shades of blue, an 18-year-old boy stood alone on a quiet residential street. The air was heavy, and the day's heat still clung to the pavement. Dust coated his worn shoes, each step he had taken earlier leaving its mark, and his clothes were creased and damp with sweat. His throat burned with thirst, so dry that even swallowing felt painful. He paused beneath a flickering streetlight, gathering what little strength he had left. Hours earlier, his bus had broken down on a deserted stretch of road far from the city. With no money for another ride and his phone long dead, he had no choice but to walk. Mile after mile, he pushed forward, convincing himself that help would appear soon. But as the sun dipped lower, hope grew thinner. Every house he passed looked closed off, curtains drawn, doors shut tight as if the world had already gone to sleep. By the time he reached this street, his legs ached and his head felt light. He wasn't asking for much, just a glass of water, just enough to steady himself before continuing on. Still, doubt crept into his mind. What if no one answered? What if they turned him away? He had learned early in life that not everyone trusted strangers, especially boys his age with tired eyes and dusty clothes. He stopped in front of a modest house, its porch light glowing softly, the only sign of life on the street. The sight gave him a small sense of courage. He stepped closer, his heart pounding louder than the distant hum of traffic. Lifting his hand, he hesitated. For a brief moment, memories rushed in, warnings from adults, stories of doors never opened, kindness that sometimes came with conditions. His hand trembled, but thirst won the battle. He knocked gently. The sound echoed louder than he expected, sharp against the evening silence. Almost immediately, he regretted it, wondering if he should walk away before anyone came. Seconds passed. The house remained still. No footsteps, no voices, only the soft chirping of insects and the steady beat of his own heart. He shifted his weight, glancing over his shoulder, suddenly aware of how alone he was. Maybe no one was home. Maybe they were watching from behind the door, deciding whether to answer. Just as he considered knocking again or turning away, he drew a slow breath and whispered to himself that all he needed was water. Then he waited, uncertain, standing between hope and exhaustion, wondering if this single knock would change anything at all. The door opened slowly, as if the person inside were unsure whether to welcome the night or keep it out. A middle-aged woman stood in the doorway, framed by the soft yellow glow of the hallway light behind her. For a brief second, she simply stared. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in shock, deep, unmistakable shock that froze her in place. The boy spoke quietly, his voice rough and dry. He apologized for disturbing her and explained that his bus had broken down miles away. All he asked for was a glass of water, nothing more. As he spoke, the woman did not interrupt. She studied his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, as though she were seeing something far beyond the tired stranger before her. Her hands, resting against the doorframe, began to tremble. She tried to steady them, curling her fingers slightly, but the shaking only grew worse. The boy noticed and fell silent, unsure if he had done something wrong. The evening air felt heavier now, filled with a strange tension neither of them could explain. Without speaking, the woman stepped back and opened the door wider. Her gesture was slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. She nodded gently, signaling for him to come inside. The boy hesitated for a moment, then obeyed, stepping onto the clean floor with care, suddenly aware of how dusty and worn he must look. As she turned away from him, her shoulders sagged. Whatever strength had carried her to the door seemed to vanish all at once. She took 2 unsteady steps forward, then stopped. Her breath caught sharply in her chest, and before she could reach for the wall, her knees buckled beneath her. She fell to the floor, not with a cry but with a quiet collapse, as if her body had finally surrendered to something it had been holding back for years. The boy froze, panic rising in his chest. He rushed toward her, asking if she was all right, but she barely seemed to hear him. Tears streamed down her face, uncontrolled and silent, her hands pressed against the floor as though grounding herself in reality. Her lips moved, forming words that never fully came out. For a long moment, the house was filled with nothing but her quiet sobs and the ticking of a clock somewhere in the distance. The boy stood helplessly nearby, clutching his backpack straps, confused and frightened. He had knocked on the door for water, but instead he had stepped into something deeply personal, something heavy with emotion and memory. As she slowly lifted her face, her eyes met his again. In them was not fear nor anger, but a profound sorrow mixed with disbelief. Whatever she saw in him had broken through her defenses completely, leaving her vulnerable in a way she had never expected from a simple knock at the door.
I know things have been tough lately, but we need to talk about what's been going on with you. I don't know how to say it.
After a long silence, the woman finally spoke. Her voice was fragile, breaking between words as she wiped her tears with trembling hands. She apologized again and again, embarrassed by her collapse, insisting that the boy had done nothing wrong. Slowly, she asked him to sit, and though confusion still weighed heavily on him, he obeyed, sensing that something important was about to be shared. Taking a deep breath, she began to explain. Many years ago, she said, she had a son, her only child. He was a teenager then, full of plans and restless dreams, always talking about the places he wanted to see and the life he wanted to build. One morning, he left on a journey, promising to return soon. She remembered standing at the door that day, waving as he walked away, never imagining it would be the last time she saw him. Days turned into weeks and weeks into years. There were searches, unanswered phone calls, and sleepless nights filled with fear. No clear answers ever came. Her son had simply vanished, leaving behind a house full of memories and a mother drowning in questions. She blamed herself constantly, wondering if she had said the wrong thing, if she should have stopped him, if love alone had not been enough to protect him. As she spoke, her gaze kept drifting back to the boy sitting across from her. She gestured toward him with shaking fingers and admitted the truth she had been avoiding. He was the same age her son would be now, the same height, the same eyes that seemed kind even when tired. Even his voice, gentle and respectful, echoed the past in a way that felt almost unbearable. "I know you're not him," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I know that, but when I opened the door, it felt like time broke." She explained that seeing him standing there, asking for water so politely, had reopened a wound she had spent years trying to seal. She had learned how to survive with the pain, but she had never truly healed. That single moment had pulled her back into memories she kept hidden, birthday candles never lit, conversations never finished, and a future that never arrived. The boy listened quietly, his heart heavy. He didn't know what to say. He felt honored by her trust, yet deeply saddened by her story. He realized then that her collapse had not been weakness, but the release of years of grief held tightly inside. The woman wiped her face and offered a faint, sad smile. "You didn't just knock on my door," she said. "You knocked on a part of my life I never stopped missing." In that room, between a stranger and a grieving mother, the truth settled gently but painfully. Some losses never disappear, but sometimes, through unexpected encounters, they finally find a voice.
Wait! Come back here!
The woman rose slowly and went to the kitchen, her movements careful, as though she were afraid the moment might shatter if she rushed it. She poured the boy a tall glass of cold water and placed it in front of him with both hands. He drank gratefully, each swallow easing the dryness in his throat and the tension in his chest. Without asking, she began preparing a simple meal: warm bread, soup gently simmering on the stove, and a plate set neatly at the table. As he ate, the house felt less heavy. The silence that had once been filled with grief softened into something calmer. They talked quietly, not about the past, but about ordinary things. The boy shared where he was from, his plans for the future, and how he hoped to continue his education despite the challenges life kept placing in his way. The woman listened closely, nodding, occasionally smiling, as if each word stitched something back together inside her. For the first time in years, she felt present, not trapped in memory, not weighed down by regret, but anchored in the now. The boy's presence did not replace what she had lost, yet it reminded her that the world had not ended with that loss. Life had continued, fragile and imperfect, but still capable of warmth. When the meal was finished, she offered him a small bag with extra food and wrote down directions to the nearest bus stop. Her voice was steadier now, her hands no longer shaking. The boy thanked her repeatedly, his gratitude sincere and respectful. Before leaving, he paused, unsure whether to say more, then simply said that he would never forget her kindness. She walked him to the door and opened it slowly. The night air was cool now, and the street was quiet once again. The boy stepped outside and turned back one last time, offering a small, hopeful smile before continuing down the road. The woman remained standing in the doorway long after he disappeared from view. She watched the empty street, but this time it did not feel so empty. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, not healed completely, but eased as though a heavy weight had been gently shifted. That knock had not returned her son. It had not answered all her questions or erased her pain, but it had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that kindness still flowed between strangers, that compassion still mattered, and that even brief encounters could carry meaning. As she closed the door, she placed her hand against it and whispered a quiet thank you, not for the past returning, but for the simple, powerful truth she had rediscovered. Sometimes healing does not come from answers or miracles. Sometimes it begins with an open door, a shared meal, and a glass of water offered at the right moment.